Welcome to Core Finance, where I'm joined by Marc Ostwald, who's a strategist at ADM Investor Services. How are you today, Marc?
I'm very well, thank you.
Are you getting over the appointment of Vince Cable as leader of the Lib Dems? Is it something that's
yeah, I don't really see that makes a great difference. I think in terms of the UK, what one really would be hoping that there's going to be some form of cross-party grouping which materialises from both Conservatives and Labour to give us some hope of some new politics in this country, which seem to be descending into an ever deeper hole of mediocrity and incompetence, sadly.
Well, I think it's a pretty comprehensive answer there, Marc. Okay, let's go on to more conventional activities. We were talking about this yesterday with guests on the programme, and people have great faith in Draghi in the sense that they feel that he can, even if there's a tsunami heading in his direction, he can sort of just negotiate with it and make it go back again. Yeah, I mean, here, all his cards. Everybody knows what cards he has. He's got to unease everything. And so the press conference yesterday could only really be hawkish. It could never be anything. It could either be neutral or hawkish.
And it wasn't.
Okay.
And that's the whole point,
so
really.
What happened with the euro then?
So what's happened really with the euro, I mean, this is the irony. Initially, the reaction to Draghi's press conference, it was a lot more dovish than people had been expecting. There's even chatter from sources inside the ECB that they may not even make a decision on the tapering process until October, let alone the September meeting. They're unsure. They're looking at the inflation trend, but in market terms, what's happening is, and there's, I think, a huge amount of irony in this, but there's a combination of factors at work. First of all, the euro seems to be the safe haven from the United States political woes, which, if one thinks of how we came into this year at the top of the year, and all the talk of the euro area and the EU is on the point of complete implosion, it seems an irony that we've got to that stage. But there is another factor driving this rally, which has nothing to do with what Draghi said, and that is that central banks for many years have been FX reserve managers at central banks have been for many years rather underweight the euro because of the political woes, because of the weakness of the economy, because of the negative interest rates, so therefore it's very unattractive to allocate to the euro. And now they are playing catch up, and their size 12 boots have been noted all over the euro. So as much as I would say the market's now getting very long, as we saw in the Commitment of Traders report last week, as long as those central banks are still rebalancing their portfolios, the euro probably still maintains a bid until we get something rather more upsetting, say something political in the eurozone as opposed to the US, which might unseat it a little.
So basically, even though it was like almost whatever he said, the euro was going to go up. So that was almost the press conference was almost like
almost like an irrelevance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide, the next situation here, which is FTSE 100, FTSE company to watch. Paysafe, online payments company, was received, I believe, a £3.7 billion bid. Just continues a recent trend of payments companies being taken over. So we had the Worldpay company, and this stock, even though it was already up a lot, has gone a little bit higher as well. But good news for M&A fans. Next up, we have the wonderfully named Metal Tiger, AIM stock, obviously, which is a great favourite amongst private investors, which today gave details of 19 potential exploration targets which have been identified at its Kalahari copper belt in Botswana. The pound flirting with the $1.30 level, which I suppose people did say that was going to be its natural top of the range. It overshot a little bit, just ahead of the CPI.
I think what one has to understand here is really it's not about sterling strength to any extent. It's about dollar weakness, and this is really what's driving that move. And one can see the corollary of that is obviously sterling remains very weak against the euro.
Right. Okay. So, is the big 9-0 coming up?
More than likely. I mean, given the inflation data that we had this week was significantly lower than most people are expecting, and the spending numbers yesterday, okay, they were slightly better than expected. But as the Office for National Statistics in the UK noted, consumer spending is going to be contributing just 0.1% to Q2 GDP, which is a far cry from what it used to be doing.
Okay. Next up, something which I felt really made my day, Credit Suisse with their rating and their coverage of Burberry. I mean, these things can be very useful and sometimes not so useful. Today, they were neutral before. Their new recommendation is neutrality. Couldn't be bothered to come up with a target, even though they didn't have one before. Not sure. What is the point of these situations here? What's one of the exercise, let's say?
Yes, one would have thought if you were neutral beforehand, you're neutral now. Is it really worthy of any coverage at all?
Well, the good news is that somebody has gotten Paul Price has gone from Burberry's to join Topshop and will be its first male boss there. So that might inspire Credit Suisse to write something there. Core number here is one that we shouldn't laugh, really. It's not nice to laugh at other people's misfortune, but as it's SSE and it's a utility company, most people don't really have a great goodwill towards his company, but SSE has lost 230,000 customers in a very short period, in 3 months, in fact. And for some reason, after they raised prices by 6.9% in April, people decided that they didn't want to be with them anymore.
Well, it is encouraging, finally, given the previous record or the history of this, is that actually people don't switch their utility providers nearly enough. And at least this latest round of price increases by most of the utility providers is encouraging some movement.
Yes, I'd like to know where they went, actually, but so obviously they've gone somewhere which is good value, but we'll have to do more research on that particular one. Yeah. Next up, we've got the economic calendar, relatively low-key, but I suppose the Baker Hughes recount has a degree of importance.
The Canadian CPI data is important. The Canadian dollar's been inordinately strong. We're just sub 126 at the moment. When one looks at that CPI data, given that a lot of the propulsion behind the Canadian dollar has been to do with expectations of further Bank of Canada tightening, you're looking at in headline inflation coming down to 1.1%, which would be a 10-month low, and core inflation being at 1.3%, which is a cyclical low for this current cycle. The pressure on the Bank of Canada to hike further, I think, is really quite modest, and therefore, if it were to come in below expectations, it could spike that Canadian dollar rally.
So what are they doing then? They've got a housing market issue.
Well, their primary objective is, as with a lot of these other central banks, is they don't feel that, given the economies are performing pretty well in GDP terms, let's leave aside the inflation side of the equation, it's justifiable to actually have rates at the current levels that we have, and that is absolutely true.
So it's the journey to normalisation.
Yes. Well, vague, slightly less accommodative stance, I think, is probably a better way of terming it.
Okay. Marc Ostwald, strategist at ADM Investor Services, thank you very much for coming in today.